Hello everyone, welcome to another video by Legacy IAS where we are going to talk about the final stage of the examination, which is the interview, or rather the personality test. Now, as the word suggests, personality test, which means that you have already been judged on the basis of your knowledge at the prelims level and the mains level. Not that you will not be asked, questions based on information or conceptual clarity, etc. But what is even judged beyond here is your personality. And the first thing that you, of course, are going to talk about when it comes to personality, besides the physical appearances, besides how you look or how you talk, it's also important that how you are concising and what you are saying, all right, which is something so important. And the first thing that you generally are asked to say, or generally that you also start by saying, is by introducing yourself. One of the most important questions that is being talked about, or something that you should definitely prepare, if not anything else, is how you will introduce yourself before the UPSC panel. Okay, different people have sometimes different orientation they may or may not have, but there are some things that you need to keep in mind as far as the interview is concerned. Okay, there are some things that you need to keep in mind, that when someone is asking to introduce yourself, it's generally the first question of an interview. Towards the end of the interview, you cannot expect someone asking you, okay, please introduce yourself. All right. It's generally the first thing that they basically ask you. One should always understand this UPSC interview. If the idea is, the ideal way of doing it is to have a conversation. It's almost like a conversation you're having with your elders, with the senior members. Okay, so that is the kind of decorum you need to maintain. That is the kind of physicality, tonality, the words usage, the phrases that you use. If you get that part, you will get a lot of these things right. Now, the same way when we start with any interview we've given, hopefully for at some examination, or maybe for PhD or even for a job, we of course are wanting a lot of confidence. Confidence is something which is needed in every walk of life. And the way in which your start goes, sometimes you do get a lot of confidence in just how things will progress henceforth. So, the way to, or rather, the importance that is being given to introducing yourself actually kind of replicates or trickles down to a lot of other things which will be guided by in the rest of the interview. Okay, now in the entire interview, one should be really careful, just like we are with our elders. We're not the way in which we are with our friends or peers, right? So we need to really be sure of what we are saying, all right, and what we are not saying. Something, sometimes people, let's say, even when you are at home, sometimes you're a little careful as to not make some strong statements, have a little bit of a balance, have a bit of a positive approach. So, the same way, you need to really understand what not to say. But here, unlike your parents or your family member who might have much more time to spend with you, the UPSC panel is actually extremely busy. So please provide them only with the relevant information, no unnecessary details. And here you basically can refer to very some specific things. Okay, now what also is very important is that before a UPSC panel, they generally have an idea as to what you have written in your DAF, but also of course how you basically start the discussion, the conversation. How is that conversation started? And just like in a conversation, one thing leads to the other, and that's how the conversation continues. You are the starting point of that one thing leading to another, and that introduction is the starting point. So it's upon you how you take the discussion, or how you maneuver around the discussion forward. All right, so be very careful as to where you want the discussion to be going forward, which is why it's equally important to look at what to say and what not to say. If you don't want them to ask you questions on some things, then don't mention them at the stage of your introduction. All right. Be very careful of the choice of words that you're using or the kind of attention you want them to put on something that you are talking about. Okay. So, just like let's say you're having an interview, just the way in which you would have your resume, you may have, let's say, Nitish Patel, okay, and then in your resume you'll have city, so let's say Bangalore, India, all right, or date of birth. So you can just start by saying that your name, your introduction, where you belong from, or let's say if you've changed cities, then you can say you were born and brought up here, but you're living here, okay, how many years old you are, just the way, let's say, try to look at how you would make your resume, all right. Then in a small sentence after saying where you come from, what you have studied, because of course graduate is the minimum basic criteria, so you have to study. So where have you done, let's say if you're a graduate, then you can just mention about your class 12 and your graduation, or if you've done higher study, then maybe graduation and masters, whatever maybe the highest education, accordingly small introduction about that. Then a brief about your previous work. Don't brag too much and don't be too minimalist on your details. Just mention which organization you have worked in, at what position you have worked in. If you have worked for more number of years, then the number of years, and the last held position or organization and organization. You may also be interested in a specific area of work that you might want them to ask you about. Let's say you work on artificial intelligence. So you might just highlight, I'm working in this organization at this position and have specialized in artificial intelligence over the years. Now you've used the word. You've already thrown a hint that they might want you to ask a question. A, because it's so talked about. B, because it's relevant to your field. And C, they want to just know that how good you are in your subject, and you've just given them a hint. Okay, this can be another point. So it can be a very smart way to actually say the things or highlight upon the things that you want to be questioned upon. It's not a way to give them an opportunity to see how much you know about AI, but also in a way to, like I said in the very beginning, if you talk about the areas that you're comfortable in, it will keep your confidence in place. And this, my friend, is really going to take you long in any journey for that matter, definitely UPSC. Okay, so choosing the topics, the areas in which you are confident, comfortable about, that can also be something that is very, very relevant. Not that they're not going to ask you academic based questions, but at least something which is there in your hand can be managed. If they ask you what has come up in the news today, of course, then you will have to answer that. But that is a different discussion altogether. These are some of the questions which still can be in your hand. Okay, so let us try to focus on that. As it is, in mains, prelims are definitely an interview. It's all about focusing upon the most topics you are most comfortable and good in, and try to minimize, the areas which you're not so good in. And the final thing is also about, besides work, whether what your interests are. You can also talk about it, and hobbies happen to be a very important point of conversation during the interview. So always be well in that preparation mode as far as your hobbies and interests are also concerned. So just a brief idea about covering these aspects, mentioning these aspects, not too many details that my father came from this generation and my father is from this, or my mother is. Just be very simple, very clear in your ideas and thoughts, crisp details. And I gave you one example. For some instances you can use this. What goes without saying is that this introduction, small, good, positive, neat introduction, can really give a very good start to the rest of your interview, which can really make a very good mark and an impression. So I hope you have benefited in understanding how basically are you to introduce yourself. This kind of introduction can basically be referred, be applicable to some other interviews as well. But for UPSC, I think this might just be the way to go forward. I hope you've liked the video today. Thank you so much.